Why, happy Wednesday. It's a Wednesday. It's a glorious Wednesday. And today is the day I'm going to be talking about what happened Monday. Kind of. This is a very interesting topic, to say at least. I'm not going to rehash what happened in Nashville. I think everybody knows. I don't want to give that person any more attention because I don't think they deserve it. I do think that we should honor the victims, and I don't really have that brought up because you can't really bring that up without mentioning the person that committed such a terrible, horrendous act. You got to be You have to be a special kind of evil to go after kids. They're defenseless. You're taking away our future. And I don't think banning guns is the issue. I mean, I think that should be the last resort. When we're talking about taking away our rights, we don't have that many rights left over anymore. I mean, we're losing rights left and right. You have the Restrict Act, which is just the 1984 bill that takes away people's rights to have social media. So I don't think taking away rights is the answer. But here's part of my theory and speculations. Now, antidepressants, also known as SSRIs, I don't know if there's an actual link. This is more of speculation here. But it's kind of something that we need to discuss when it comes to these terrible actions. It's clearly mental health issues or mental stability of these people are not into question because they have none. They're very unstable. They're very dangerous. They present a danger to themselves and other people through their immediate actions. But what are SRIs? SRIs are selective steroid reuptake inhibitors. Inhibitors are classed as antidepressant medicines prescribed for treatment for the range of psychological disorders. They are most commonly used for depression, but also used widely prescribed to help manage symptoms of anxiety and anxiety-related disorders, including generalization anxiety, social anxiety, obsessive compulsive disorder, and post-traumatic stress disorder. The prototype drug in this group is Fluoxetine, best known for its trade name Prozac. Already pretty much that is a group of related chemicals. The SRIs are a group of related chemical compounds that increase the amount of neurotransmitter serotonin in the brain. Neurotransmitters are feral signals from one nerve cell to the next across a junction known as synapse, relaying a message across the synapse. Neurotransmitter generally gets reabsorbed by the nerve cells, a process known as reuptake. SRA inhibits the absorption process, resulting in higher serotonin levels, increasing the availability of serotonin at the synapses, facilitates the transmission of nerve signals involving regulating mood, appetite, biorhythm, and overall well-being. So you're pretty much changing the chemicals within your brain, whether or not you have a chemical imbalance or a chemical disruption. These drugs are there to help you out. First major SRI to be introduced to the general public was Fluoxetine, widely known as its trade name Prozac, in 1987. More than 3 decades later, Prozac remains one of the more popular SSRIs and its 19th most prescribed drug in America. Other SRI includes Zoloft, citalopram, Alexia, Paxil, Brisel, Praxil, Exaltarium. They differ from Prozac in chemical structures. Theoretically, the specific symptom that they were targeting and their possible side effects. For example, SSRI, we will another word I can't pronounce. Berberpomian, well, a Berthian is sometimes used to help people to stop smoking. Drugs like penicillin changed the course of human history, providing a cure for infections ravage populations around the globe, but Prozac may be the first drug to ever become a cultural celebrity. In the 1993, psychologist Peter Kramer wrote, listening to Prozac, claiming that the drug just didn't cure depression, but changed personality. The book became a blockbuster bestseller and inspired many other books about the drug and its uses, but the most enduring contribution may have been widening the public discussion of mental health conditions and reduce the stigma attached to them. Let's see, this is really kind of a long article or a long synopsis of it. This is more about getting help and understanding the drugs, but changing people's personalities. This is from Business Insider. Something's starting to go on with antidepressant use around the world. A few years ago, the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Developing, OECD, looked into antidepressants in use in 25 countries and found something startling. In every single country the OECD looked at, antidepressant use was on the rise. In Germany, antidepressant had risen to 46% just in 4 years. Spain, Portugal, it rose about 20% during the same period. Iceland led the pack overall use with 1 in 10 people taking daily antidepressant, but figure that may be underestimated for the actual rate used since the calculation isn't restricted to just adults. The United States was not included in the OECD analysts. We added it in the chart below. But if it had been, it would knock Iceland out of the top spot. 11% of Americans over the age of 12 take a antidepressant. Global antidepressant users per 1,000 people. You got Korea being the least amount and Chile being tied. And of course, you got United States being number 1. It's difficult to say exactly what the data tells us. Antidepressants is not an actual window into rates of depression. Instead, the popularity of antidepressants has given the country the results of complicated mix of depression rates, stigma, wealth, health coverage, and availability of treatment. The United States, for example, only about a third of the people with severe depression take antidepressants. In South Korea, where antidepressant is used the lowest among the countries analyzed, the suicide rates is the highest in the developing world. Koreans are much likelier than Americans to see mental illness as a personal weakness, research has shown, which means many never seek treatment. According to the review of the research on depression in Nordic countries, Iceland's unusual high antidepressant is a result of their perceived effectiveness by users, but also the effect of limited access to alternative treatments like psychotherapy. The rise rates of antidepressant usage there, however, has not been tied to any decrease of suicide rates or disability due to depression. In fact, a review notes increase of antidepressant consumptions has spurred an ongoing debate whether or not antidepressants are overprescribed, medicinized or medicalization, or underprescribed, poor access to treatment. The OECD suggests 2 possible reasons for the rate of antidepressant consumption is a rise in so many countries. Of course, the treatment lasts longer than it used to, and antidepressants are now prescribed not only for severe depression, but also for mild depression, anxiety, social phobia, and more. Spending long periods of time on antidepressant actually aligns with the international guidelines for treatment. The World Health Organization recommends that people continue taking antidepressant for at least 9 to 12 months after they recovered. Acknowledged, however, the evidence support that the recommendation is moderate. More research is needed. Among Americans, 60% of people taking antidepressants have been taking them for at least 2 years. 14 have been taking them for 10 years or more. That seems to match the WHO's guidance, but it has a more difficult to solve problem. Less than a third of Americans taking antidepressants have actually had an appointment with the mental health profession within the past year, suggests critical weakness in the system where medication is widely available, often prescribed by a primary care physician or holistic mental health care as a frequent monitoring or not. So, my theory or speculation is the antidepressant pills. The issue with the antidepressant pills is that sometimes it does not fix the underlying cause of an issue, and you're just putting a band-aid on a band-aid on a band-aid. Now, I'm not saying that we should ban the anti-prescription or antidepressant drugs or the SSRI drugs. I think it needs to be in conjunction to addressing oneself's problems. Just addressing oneself's problems instead of just prescribing a pill to make you feel better, because drug use, regardless if it's prescribed or unprescribed, a lot of people take drugs to escape their reality. The issue is once they become sober, their issues are still there. I mean, you could be a drunk, and once you sober up, your issues come to light, which cause you to drink even more, and then you become an alcoholic. I'm just using that as an example. But of course, there's also another debate. Now, since the Washington Post wants to be behind a paywall, democracy dies in darkness. I'm going to say democracy dies in paywalls. According to this person, which was posted in October 3rd, 2017, by Leah Liverskill, I used to think gun control was the answer. My research told me otherwise. This is the Washington Post, one of the people there the most anti-gun that want to take away our guns, posted this in 2017. Leah Liverskill, a statistics and former news writer from 538, a data journalist site, she authored Arriving at Amen. Before starting researching gun deaths and gun control policies used to frustrate me. I wish the National Rifle Association would stop blocking common sense gun control reforms, such as banning assault weapons, restricting silencers, shrinking magazine size, and other measures that can make guns less deadly. I think the goal is to make them less deadly. Now, the way we get there is completely different. I understand the math problem. 0 guns equals 0 gun deaths. But the issue is that you're not solving gun violence. You're solving gun violence, but you're not solving the violent behavior there in people. Just like antidepressants isn't really solving your depression or whatever your anxiety is or your stress is. You're just masking them in a pill that's making you feel better. This is no different than getting drunk to hide away from your problems. Then my colleagues and I at 538 spent 3 months analyzing all 330,000 lives ended by guns each year in the United States. I wound up frustrated at the whole new way we looked at what interventions might have saved those people. And case for policies I lobbied for crumbled when I examined the evidence. The best ideas left were narrowly tailored interventions to protect subtypes of potential victims, not a broad attempt to limit the lethality of guns. I restrict this person research strictly tightened gun laws in Britain and Australia concluded it did not prove much for what American policies should be. Neither nation experienced drops in mass shootings or other gun-related crime that could be contributed to their buyback and bans. Mass shootings were too rare in Australia for their absence after the buyback program to be clear evidence of progress. In both Australia and Britain, gun restrictions are ambiguous effort on other gun-related crimes or deaths. When I looked into other oft-praised policies. I found that no gun owner walks into the store to buy an assault weapon. It's a invented classification that includes any semi-automatic that has two or more features, such as a bayonet-mounted or a rocket-propelled grenade launcher mount, a folding stock, or a pistol grip. But guns are modular, and any hobbyist can easily add these features at home, just as if they were snapping together Legos. I mean, sure, if you know what you're doing, sure. As for silencers, I observed that in that name only in movies where they reduce the gunfire to softly puyuk, puyuk. In real life, silencers limit the hearing damage for shooters but do not make gunfire dangerously quiet. An AR-15 with a silencer is about as loud as a jackhammer. Magazine limits are a little bit more promising, but a practice shooter can still change magazines as fast as to make the limit meaningless. Meaningless. There we go. As a co-worker, as my coworkers and I kept looking at the data, it seems less and less clear that one broad gun control restriction can make a big difference. 2/3 of gun deaths in the United States surveyed year are suicide. Almost no proposal restrictions would make it meaningful harder for people with guns on hand to use them. I couldn't even answer my most desperate question. If I had a friend who had guns in home and had a history of suicide attempts, was there anything I could do that would help? I mean, yes, you be a friend to them and you try to coax them into therapy, and hopefully they could take some antidepressant, which masks the suicide thoughts while they address their personal issues. Then they get off of antidepressant and they're happier for it. That'd be my suggestion. However, the next largest set of gun deaths, 1 in 5, were young men 15 to 34, killed in homicides. These men were mostly likely to die at the hands of other younger men, often related to gang loyalists and other street violence. And the last notable group of similar deaths was the 1,700 women murdered per year, usually as a result of domestic violence. Far more people were killed these ways than in mass shooting incidents, but a few popular floated policies were tailored to serve them. By the time we published our project, I didn't believe in many of the interventions I heard politicians tout. I was still anti-gun, at least from the point of view that most gun owners, I did not want a gun in my home. I used to think the risk outweighs the benefits, but I can't endorse policies. Only selling point is that the gun owners hate them. Policies often see as they were drafted by people who have encountered guns only as they figured in a briefing book or an image on the news. Instead, I found the most hope in more narrowly tailoring intervention, potential suicide victims, women menaced by their abusive partners, and kids swept in the street vendettas are in danger from guns, but each required a different protection. Let's see here. Older men who make up the largest share of gun suicides need better access to people who could care for them and to get them help. Women endangered by Pacific men need to be prioritized by the police, who can enforce restraining orders and prohibit these men from buying and owning guns, which is something I do agree with. I do agree with the background checks, and if you have a domestic violence in your history, you, as a person that committed domestic violence, gave up your Second Amendment when you abuse your partner. Now, I don't think that should be absolute. I do think over a period of time, whether it's 6 years, 8 years, 10 years down the road, you should be able to prove that you're responsible to be able to get your Second Amendment rights back. Let's see here. Younger men at risk need blah, 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 blah. Let's see here. Younger men at risk of violence need to be identified before they take a life or lose their life and be connected to mentors that can help them de-escalate conflicts. Even the most data-driven practice, such as New Orleans plans to identify gang members for intervention based on previous arrests and weapon seizures, wind up more personal than policies floated. Young men at risk can be identified in an algorithm but have but they have to be disarmed one by one. Personally, not en masse, as though they were interchangeable. A reduction in gun deaths is most likely to come from finding smaller changes for victories and expanding those solutions as much as possible. We save lives by focusing on the range of tactics and protecting a different kind of potential victims and reforming potential killers, not by sweeping bans focusing on the guns themselves. So those are three articles. Well, one's not really an article. One is just telling you what SSRIs, and the other one was talking about how they're prescribed. And you also have the Washington Post, which told you banning the guns will not solve the issue. Underlining the issue is that we have some violent people here. We have a violent culture, and we must fix the culture first to see if that could eliminate a lot of these mass shootings. We also have to look into the therapy and the drugs that people are taking, see if they're even having a positive effect on them. And we also need to make sure that the drugs that they're taking are not making them suicidal or making them want to kill someone. Now, this was unrelated. I forget what it was they were talking about. Oh, yeah, they were talking about violence in school on KLBJ. I want to say last Friday. And there was 3 callers that called in. One is their child was on these antidepressant or mood suppressing drugs. And once they took them off, changed their diet, got them the therapy that they needed, they were a completely different person and were able to become productive members of the school. There's another caller that called in that said that they did not want to prescribe their kids any drugs. They tried changing the diet, they tried everything, and they ended up putting them on drugs, which actually helped them. And then you also had a third caller, I forget if it was then or there, but they were working in a call center. This person had a terrible breakup with one of their exes, wasn't able to recover from that. They put this person on a prescription, made this person suicidal, so they went back to the therapist. And this person was honest. This person says, I'm no longer suicidal. I want to take out everyone here. Unfortunately, that person was fired without getting the help they needed. And then their life went spiraling out of control, all because they weren't able to handle the stress or the drama of that breakup, which is pretty sad, which is terrible. So I do think that drugs that we prescribe kids are having a negative effect on them. I think they're being overprescribed for behavior issues when they just need a better diet or they need exercise, they need another outlet other than taking drugs. But I don't know if someone's going to be willing to do that study in time. And that's where I stand on this. This is kind of a longer video, so hopefully you watched it to the end. With that being said, have yourself a wonderful day, morning, or evening.